Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. Ryan Ermanni, Braylon Edwards, and Erik Kramer, the last quarterback to win a Lions playoff game, is in studio with us. Obviously, you wrote a book, Erik Kramer with William Croyle, The Ultimate Comeback Story, an incredible comeback story. Going to get to that in just a little bit. He's going to be at Tommy's Bar and Grill in Detroit tonight on 3rd Avenue as well, if you want to meet him out there. Erik Kramer, how are you, sir?
Tip top, man. Thanks for having me here. This is great to be back. In obviously snowing today, so not quite, balmy California where I'm from, but not good nonetheless.
Hey, Erik, when I say last Lions quarterback ever to win a playoff game, can you even wrap your head around that? That's still 1991.
Hard to believe it was 3 decades ago plus. But it's unfortunately that is the case. Mm-hmm. But I think that's all going to change in a couple nights.
How closely do you follow this team still?
Very. Yeah. I love it. I love the story of this team. Obviously, Jared Goff is probably the best story maybe in the NFL this year. And, basically was a throwaway for the Lions as a quarterback. And then here he's revived his career. And really, to me, is now one of the top quarterbacks in the league. And leading into the playoffs, hitting his stride.
Talking about the energy, the electricity that's going to be at Ford Field, I want to take it back to 91. Do you remember the noise in the Silverdome? What was that experience like walking out there? What was it like?
Ridiculous. I don't know how many people there. Whatever it holds, that's what it held. And that's how many people were there. And everyone had the little white, whatever they were, pom-poms or something. Yeah. And it was hard to think. It was so loud. So if you're a Cowboy that day, how you communicated even to each other on the sidelines, I don't know. That was just an electric overall vibe that day.
We talked to a guy just recently before you came in, one of your former teammates, Lomas Brown, told me to tell you, he called him brass. Speaking of communication, said, you know what? I don't like that one, Wayne. Send another one. I don't like that one, Wayne. Send another one. Was that just something you like, I can come up with a better play?
Well, in a way, we had our offensive coordinator, Dave Levy, was good at allowing me to bring him ideas, and so we that's how it worked. Kind of you don't really take, unless you take ownership of something. It's really hard to get everybody to invest in it, and so Lomas actually gave me. Brass was a nice nickname given to me by Ken Dallafor. But Lomas actually gave me the nickname Calfless. Why? I'm not quite so sure, because if you can see here, I'm bursting. Right. Barely.
Erik, how close were you to staying here in Detroit?
I would have loved to have stayed here, actually. After the 93 season, I became a free agent. But never received a contract offer from the Lions, and so I don't know what their thinking was, but it certainly I wasn't at the top of the priority list, and so when the Bears came calling, who was I to say no?
If you had stayed, do you believe you could have continued to make that run? Because that Cowboy team, you guys beat them right when they were just starting to blossom. And look what happened to them after that. You guys were called the teams of the 90s by Pat Summerall and John Madden, and only the Cowboys became that.
So, it was a team of the 90s. Unfortunately, it could have been two, because our roster very much was similar to the one that the Lions have now. And to me, the difference was this current team with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and the way the management and ownership is set up looks poised to make a long run for the future. Unfortunately, with our squad, everybody kind of started going in different directions, and it was the Cowboys, the Packers, the 49ers that in the NFC were the ones that said, "Oh, okay, we'd like to win."
Yeah.
Erik, what did you make of the? Did you see the? Maybe you did. Maybe you did see the Bye Bye Barry documentary and all the controversy of Wayne Font saying we would have won if we had a quarterback. And Scott Mitchell, we had on our show, actually, he was pissed.
Yeah, he was.
He was pissed. What do you make of that?
Well, we had a quarterback.
Yeah, we did.
If I'm being honest with you, we could use a coach.
There it is. Mm-hmm. I love it.
Was there any good parts of Wayne?
I'm sure there were. I just don't know what parts of Wayne were good that showed up as the head coach of the Lions. I mean, if you asked me to list one, I couldn't.
What did he do wrong? What did he do to rub you the wrong way?
He didn't do anything to rub me the wrong way. I mean, he kind of, well, let me back up and say that with him as a head coach, nobody ever knew who was playing what, at least when it came to quarterback. And so
Rodney, Andre,
it was kind of a revolving door for some reason. I'll give you a perfect example. After that season, 91, where we beat the Cowboys and, we're one game away from the Super Bowl, we come back to training camp, or mini camp, and now there's a new offensive coordinator, Dan Henning, and Wayne, and no one in the organization, not Wayne, not anyone higher up than Wayne, I received no phone call. So I showed up to mini camp at practice, not in a meeting, nothing, and I was 13.
Third team. After taking the team to the NFC Championship game.
Wow.
That's what I said. Wow.
What does that do to a player? What does that do to a team?
Well, I'll tell you what it does to a player, this one in particular. It made me lose all kinds of respect for Wayne Fontes. So when you ask me what good things about Wayne Fontes there were, that's what I would start with. Answer that question.
So there's really no secret as to why the Lions didn't win another playoff game after that year, is in his tenure.
If you're asking me, there's no secret.
Yeah.
So again, match up the top teams in the 90s, right? Which were the Joe Gibbs-led White Redskins, which were the Green Bay Packers, the Cowboys, the 49ers. And then you have Wayne Fontes?
Yeah, those organizations that you just mentioned were organizationally strong from top to bottom, and then you add the situation here in Detroit. You just couldn't match up. The tail of the tape
to me,
didn't
it
match.
couldn't. But yet, if you matched up the rosters, there was not a whole lot of difference. And that's why I see this year's version of the Lions and last year going into this year completely different. Now, to me, this looks like the Lions are one of those teams that are committed from top to bottom.
You a Dan Campbell fan? I'm sorry, Braylon.
Oh no, that's all good.
Not having ever met Dan, I am a Dan Campbell fan. So you can see the way this team plays, the way he believes in the players, the way they believe in him and the staff, and even higher up. I think they're poised to be around for a while.
Yeah, Eric, you talked about the similarities in this team and 91. One of the biggest things I looked at is the offensive line and the backfield. I look at Barry, I look at Lomas, I look at that offensive line, Kevin Glover, and then I look at Frank Ragnow, I look at Jonah Jackson, I look at Panay, and I look at Jameer and David Montgomery. Just talk about the running game and the big uglies up front that really are the catalysts, in my opinion, of the Detroit Lions and their identity.
So you talked about this Lion team now. Think about this for a second. In that 91 season, we had two really good offensive guards go down. Well, sorry, excuse me. We had one in Mike Utley go down.
Yeah.
After the season, what would have been another really good yearly Pro Bowl player in addition to Mike was
Eric Andelsek.
So no other team that I can remember from back then had two guys in 1 year, two really good players gone. And so I like you, I'm a big believer offensively in if you've got a solid offensive line, which the Lions obviously do now, that's a great thing to build an offense around. And not just offensively, defensively, they've got a lot of good young players as well.
Fortunate enough to have Erik Kramer, former Lions quarterback, the last quarterback to win a playoff game here in Detroit. He is in Detroit. He is in studio. Wrote this book, The Ultimate Comeback. And this is a story of redemption. This is a story of really life and death. He's got an appearance tonight at Tommy's Bar and Grill on 3rd Avenue in Detroit. More on that. But Eric, first and foremost, for people who don't know your story, and I'm not asking you to talk for the next 3 hours. I'm sure we could talk for the next 24 about that. But just can you share for people your journey with depression, with the suicide attempt, and you're very vocal about it. Your Twitter page, former NFL quarterback and suicide attempt survivor. Thank you for doing that, by the way, because you are helping a lot of people that struggle with mental health. Can
Amen.
you just talk about that?
Yeah. So, my journey is not unlike other people's. We all have dreams. We all want to go places. We all work to get there. However, along the way, life happens. And so there's hurdles along the way. And depression was something that popped into my personal space when I went to Chicago. And it wasn't something that stuck around every year, but from time to time, it kind of came and it went. And so you talked about, even after done playing, I ran into some personal tragedies as well. So I had a young son, Griffin, who was only 18 at the time, that had battled for the previous couple years with a drug addiction, had gone to treatment, and upon getting out of the outpatient program, it took him about, maybe 6 months to kind of start making some poor choices once again. And so he, died of a heroin overdose. And he was 18 years old. This is in late 2011. And then my mom, she had found out she had cancer the day after Mother's Day earlier that year in May. And then she herself survived an incredible surgery, and only to have it come back. And my mom passed away a little over 8 months afterward, in July of 2012. Around that time, my dad had some untreated acid reflux become esophageal cancer, which was terminal. And so to watch him go steadily down over a course of about 3 years was tough too. And so during that time, I had forged a nice little broadcasting career with Fox, and all that kind of got swept under the rug at that time. And so that was a really tough emotional time, which led to me going down. It was the worst case of depression I had ever been in. I can't really say that there's levels to it, but
There are.
the massive loss was just a really deep black hole where nothing tasted good, felt good, no thoughts everything was bad. And what happened to me was I began looking through, I lost the aerial perspective, right? So I wish I could say I was looking through a keyhole, but there wasn't even a keyhole to look through. And so what I began doing, and this is because I was isolated and allowed to do this, was I began planning my exit. And, which I ended up doing. I ended up doing everything you would want to do to be successful at removing myself from this earth. And fortunately, it didn't work out real well. And meaning I wasn't successful, meaning I'm still here today. Yeah. So in a sense, it really did work out. But it was a long road getting there. It was a short road getting there. It was a really long road coming back. So the recovery process, when something like that occurs, then that is a long road back. So that was back in 2015. Here we are in 2024, and it was probably a good 4 or 5 years of doctors, rehab, close family and friends just being there. And here I am with a much different outlook on life than I went into 2015 with.
First of all, I appreciate your courage. I appreciate that. I, too, have found myself in spaces, not necessarily as far as that, but I remember retiring. I remember things like that. I remember getting into some things because I didn't know how to necessarily deal with depression. So I really respect you, and I appreciate you and love you in that space. I got into working in the space of mental health, though, with Eric Hipple, the NFL Alumni Association. I know you know Eric. I know you know those guys.
Right.
It's a great space to be in. I also, too, wrote a book then. I just want you to talk about how fulfilling and how relieving was writing the book, because I found myself when I wrote the book, some of the things I thought were my fault, they weren't.
Yeah.
And some of the things I thought were other people's fault weren't my fault. Just talk about that part of writing the book and finishing that journey.
Well, I think I've found a great amount of satisfaction. Thank you, Brandon, for pointing that out. But I found a tremendous amount of satisfaction I didn't know would be coming my way. And I had great help, obviously, from Bill Croyle, who co-wrote this book. And so the reaction that I have heard from other people, either whether they've written to me, talked to me, I've spoken at one time at a company that was arranged by somebody in Chicago, and the reaction that I've gotten from things just by, it was almost like I could have talked about the book or not talked about the book.
Yeah.
The fact that my story was what they wanted, what they would say things like, "I can't believe you're talking about this." Why? It's the truth. It's what happened. And I think it's opened a lot of doors for people to think, wow, it's not just me. And no, it's not just you.
It's funny you say this, Eric, because I do morning television in Detroit, and I have talked about my battle with depression and that I see a therapist weekly. Braylon has been open about that. Pete Spivak over here is open about that. You're in here. I think it's almost like a snowball effect. If you look at our chat right now, people are saying, yeah, yes, me too. And it's like, what is it about guys specifically that it's so hard to talk about shit? It's so hard to talk about how you really feel about life.
Feelings, what are those?
And how powerful it is to write a book like this, say you are not alone, and talk about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you said it really well right there, is that, feelings come and go, but feelings lead to actions, good or bad. And they lead to things like me somehow thinking, I found myself isolated. That wasn't a conscious decision, but I just found it that way. And the fact that all you really need to do is, in my opinion, is observe those around you. And because everybody's always doing something and people are always observing it, well, take note and see who of those around you are people that other people go to talk to. And, okay, then you reach out to them too. People that look safe, could be a therapist, could be a friend, could be someone you don't even know, but you've observed other people, and I guarantee you, that's what I do. So I think it's an uncomplicated matter, but only made complicated by what we're afraid to go do in terms of approaching people.
I think I found for me the biggest help to get out of that space or get out of those spaces, obviously besides talking to someone, is the support I have, family, friends. I've had tremendous people in my life, whether it's my mom, my stepmom, my dad, my stepdad, my sister, the list goes on, friends, girlfriends. I've had who was it that pulled you out? Who was that support that you had in that moment?
Right there.
I figured.
Anna Durgan. So we went to high school together.
Okay.
And we've been friends ever since. And so I remember Anna, one time, she was taking her two daughters and to Hawaii in a timeshare. She said, "Why don't you come? You should come with us." And this is at a time when I was depressed. And I said, "Anna, you don't understand. Wherever I get off a plane, I'm still depressed when I get there. Like,
wherever you go,
my
you take
change
you
of
with
scenery
you.
is not going to work. It's not going to happen."
Yeah.
And it wasn't like she didn't try, but I think for instance, when she would always talk about, afterward, my accident. When you had your accident, I said, Anna, you don't understand. There was no accident. I planned this out. Well, a couple years went by, and I'm like, you know what? You're right, because nobody in their right mind would ever plan this out.
Yeah.
So if you're not in your right mind, that's when I planned it out.
Right.
And so you're right. It was an accident. So it's not something I would do today. It's not something I'd ever do.
Yeah.
But depression for me always came with thoughts of suicide. Always. Some, like you feel so bad, you don't have any relationship to what other people think of you. And, I remember talking, an audience once so far, talked to this company in Chicago, and afterward, this woman comes, and we're just standing there talking, and she says, several years ago, my mom passed away, and 10 months later, my sister committed suicide. And I said, you know what? And this is after I talked to them. I said, you know what? That people like your sister and people like me, at the time you were depressed, if you do commit suicide and are successful at it, for you it's over. But for the people like you and your family, it's just beginning.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everybody at some point is going to feel bad, have depression, or you either are going to have it or you're going to know somebody intimately that does. And so the idea that, like you said, you've had a great support system, family members, as have I. And now, I've got a good network of folks around me that now we're all in the same boat together, meaning the same ones that were there before. As long as I'm rowing my oar, they're all rowing theirs.
Incredible stuff. We cannot thank you enough for your time.
Not at
We
all.
encourage everybody to get this book. And at the very least, if you don't know how to start a conversation with somebody that you may or may not suspect is dealing with depression, how about getting this book? And that's a great conversation starter, if nothing else. The Ultimate Comeback, Erik Kramer. We are just have incredible respect for you, sir. Thank you for sharing your story. You helped so many people. By the way, Erik tonight is going to be at Tommy's Bar and Grill in Detroit on 3rd Avenue. On Sunday, going to be at Hockeytown Cafe.
Making the rounds.
Before the Lions game, 4 to 5:30.
Yeah.
So tonight and Sunday, he'll be out there for you to go see him. Also, Bears single season and single game record for passing records. Do the Bears keep Justin Fields or do they trade him away?
If I'm the general manager, I trade him.
Right.
I get what he obviously played well enough to have some trade value now at the end of the season. But if you're asking me, the Bears right now are where the Detroit Lions were at the end of last season.
Absolutely.
They are poised. All they need is one more good draft, another round of free agency, and you know how they got Montez Sweat. He's a cap casualty. So you trade for somebody. It could be a center. It could be an edge rusher. It could be an offense. And if you trade Justin Fields, and my thought is, okay, if you've done all your research and Caleb Williams is the guy or Drake May is the guy, great. But because there's three other teams behind you that all want a quarterback also, that first round pick could turn into 3 first round picks.
That's right.
And then you go pick, like, who wouldn't want Bo Nix right now?
Right.
Who needs a GM? Because I got the perfect guy for the job.
Right. Guys, go get the book. Anywhere
sure.
books are sold. You can see Erik tonight in Detroit on 3rd Avenue, Tommy's Bar and Grill. Sunday, 4 to 5:30 at Hockeytown Cafe. Anyway, Jim Harbaugh. What do you think about Harbaugh?
Total thought. So my last season.
1 year with him?
Yeah. My last year was with the San Diego Chargers.
Okay.
And Jim and I were roommates in training camp. And, I mean, think about everywhere he's gone.
Winner.
You name a place where he went and didn't win.
Can't.
So what he's going to bring to wherever he goes is, or if he stays at Michigan, obviously, he's just going to be the guy that team plays as good or better than whoever they're playing.
Erik Kramer, everybody. Thanks so much, sir. Continued success, and we hope everybody gets the book, The Ultimate Comeback. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
You got it, guys. That was probably one of the most impactful 15 minutes, this segment anyway, that we have done here on Woodward Sports Network, and we're extremely grateful to do that with Erik Kramer. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more Lions Talk, our pick segment as well. Thank you, Anna, as well. Great to meet you as well. Thank you.